Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive with us. Today, we're going to be looking at something that you probably think you already know. The name California. We're going to go beyond the sunshine and the beaches and all that stuff and really try to uncover what's the history of this name. And it's a lot wilder than you might think. It even gets a little bit scandalous. Our sources for today are going to range from your typical history books, but also we're going to be looking at a 16th century Spanish romance novel. It's called Las Sergas de Esplandián, and it's by this guy, Garci Rodríguez de Montalvo. And in this novel is actually the first time that the name California ever appears in print. So as you're about to discover, this name California, it's tied up with all these myths and legends, and maybe even a little bit of wishful thinking.
You know, it's funny, California, this place that's inspired so many myths and stories, is actually itself born from a myth. The name itself actually predates the California that we know.
It's true. So in this novel, California is not even a state, it's an island. So just imagine explorers setting sail with this picture in their mind, an island paradise just overflowing with gold. And it's located somewhere near the Garden of Eden.
And ruling over this paradise is this really powerful queen, Queen Calafia, and she commands this army of fierce women warriors who are all adorned in gold.
But this island paradise, it wasn't exactly welcoming to everyone.
Oh, definitely not.
The novel describes the island as being inhabited by griffins, those creatures that are part lion and part eagle.
Oh yeah, I heard of those.
And they weren't exactly kept as pets. Any man who landed on California met a pretty unfortunate end, thanks to Queen Calafia and her griffins.
Yeah, that's a far cry from the California we think of today. So the question is, how did this fictional island with its gold-clad women warriors and these man-eating griffins, how did that become the name for a real place?
Right. So those 16th century Spanish explorers, they had Montalvo's story fresh in their minds as they set sail. And when they first encountered Baja California, their maps weren't exactly as accurate as what we've got today. They actually thought they had found an island. They saw this new land, rich with potential. And oh, this is California.
That name just stuck.
Yeah, it stuck.
Yeah.
Even when they realized that Baja California was not, in fact, an island. The name had already taken root. It started appearing on maps and in official documents. And that's how it became the name we all know today.
It really shows you how powerful these stories can be. They really shape how we see places. Even a fictional California could influence the naming of a real one.
Yeah, and I think it's so interesting that we have this Queen Calafia, this powerful, independent female character in a 16th century European novel. It seems so ahead of its time, especially when you think about how California later on becomes so associated with female empowerment.
It's a really striking detail. And while we can't draw a direct line from Queen Calafia to the women's suffrage movement or to the fight for LGBTQ rights, there's still something there, a seed was planted, this vision of a place where women could hold power and challenge those societal norms.
Right.
But the story of California goes even deeper than that.
So could you tell us more about that connection?
Yeah.
Between California and the Arabic word caliph?
Of course. So Montalvo didn't just pull the name California out of thin air. There's evidence that he drew inspiration from the Arabic word caliph, or khalifa, which means successor. And this word, it refers to a Muslim leader, specifically the ruler of a caliphate.
Okay, so for those of us who might need a reminder, what exactly is a caliphate?
Yeah, sure. So a caliphate is basically an Islamic state. Often it's a vast and powerful one. And it's ruled by a caliph, who's considered a successor to the Prophet Muhammad. So now if we think back to the historical context, during Montalvo's time, Spain actually had a pretty significant Moorish influence. The Moors, who were Muslim, ruled parts of Spain for centuries, and they left a lasting impact on the culture and language.
So it would make sense that Montalvo, as a Spaniard, writing the 16th century, would have been familiar with this term caliph and the concept of this powerful leader ruling over a distant land.
Exactly. And maybe consciously or unconsciously, that familiarity found its way into his writing and into his naming of this island paradise, ruled by Queen Calafia.
This is getting good. So we have Spanish explorers, a medieval romance novel, and now a connection to the Muslim world.
Yeah.
All coming together in the name California.
It really highlights how interconnected cultures are and how sometimes influences can be hidden in plain sight.
Yeah.
But our exploration of the name's origins, it doesn't end there. There's another fascinating layer that we have to unravel.
Okay, I'm ready. Let's keep digging.
Okay, so let's look at another potential source of inspiration for Montalvo, and that's a connection to medieval European literature in a mysterious land called Califerne.
Okay. This is getting really interesting. So what can you tell us about this Califern, and how does it tie into the story of California?
Well, it's actually mentioned in the Song of Roland, this really famous epic poem from the 11th century. It celebrates the exploits of Charlemagne, the king of the Franks. The poem describes Charlemagne facing off against enemies from these places called Afrique and Califern. Now, at the time, Califern was like this almost mythical land to European audiences, and some scholars think that it might have been referring to a real place in North Africa, possibly like a Berber stronghold. And this is something that Montalvo probably would have known about through stories and historical accounts.
So we have Montalvo's fictional California, potentially inspired by a name that could refer to a real and even dangerous place in North Africa. It seems like there's like this cyclical nature to this whole story, like a real place inspires a fictional one, which then lends its name to a new place.
Exactly, and that new place, California, is going to develop its own reputation for danger and excitement, especially in the 19th century, with the rise of San Francisco's infamous Barbary Coast.
Wait, you mean San Francisco's Red Lake District? What does that have to do with North Africa?
So Barbary Coast was a term used to refer to the coastal regions of North Africa, specifically an area known for Barbary pirates.
So are you saying that San Francisco's notorious district was nicknamed after a region known for pirates?
It's pretty interesting, right?
That can't be a coincidence.
It's a fascinating echo. Like a real dangerous place inspires a fictional one, which then lends its name to a new place. That becomes dangerous in its own right. It's like the name California itself carries the tension between fantasy and reality.
Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah.
I love it.
It is pretty cool.
Okay, so we've talked about golden griffins and powerful queens. But we haven't even touched on what might be California's most, captivating feature.
The natural landscape.
Yes, the environment. It's as diverse and full of contradictions as its history and culture. It's a place where you can find towering redwood forests and scorching deserts, rugged coastlines, and snow-capped mountains, all within a relatively short distance from each other.
It's like Mother Nature took a bit of everything and threw it all together in this one incredible place.
And that diversity has really played a huge role in shaping California's identity. Think about the environmental movement, the push for sustainability, the embrace of outdoor recreation. It's all deeply ingrained in the culture.
I've always felt like Californians have this understanding that their well-being is connected to the health of their environment, like a recognition that they're all part of something bigger.
Yeah, and that awareness has led to some groundbreaking initiatives, from renewable energy technologies to protecting vast stretches of wilderness. It strikes me that this tension between fantasy and reality, it's not just in California's name or its history, it's in its relationship with nature too.
Definitely. There's this idealized vision of California as like a paradise, this land of endless sunshine and natural abundance. And there is truth to that. But then there's the reality of droughts and wildfires and, trying to balance human needs with protecting the environment.
It's a good reminder that California, like any place, is a work in progress. We can try to create a better future, but we also have to remember this delicate balance of nature.
It seems fitting that our deep dive into California brings us to this reflection. The name itself holds so much possibility and beauty, but it also reminds us of the complexities and the contradictions that come with inhabiting this extraordinary place.
As we start to wrap up, what do you think is the most important thing that our listeners should take away from today?
I think it's the understanding that names are more than just labels. They have stories and histories and layers of meaning that can be revealed in unexpected ways. The name California is a testament to imagination and the influence of myths and legends, and to the interconnectedness of our world.
It's been an amazing journey today.
It has.
Exploring all these different facets of California, from its mythical origins to its really complex present. What stands out the most to you?
It's really the reminder that California is constantly evolving. It's a place where the past and the present are constantly talking to each other, and where fantasy and reality blur, and that dream of something better is always within reach.
I couldn't agree more. And on that note, we want to encourage all of you to keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep seeking out those hidden layers of meaning that make California such a fascinating place. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, keep on learning.
Yeah, it's like that whole idea of California, a place where anything is possible. Fortunes can be made and reinvented. Like that was built into the name from the very beginning. Right. And that brings us to another interesting connection, to Montalvo's California. that abundance of gold. The book describes the island as just being full of gold. Queen Calafia and her warriors are just covered in it.
It's almost like that fictional element became a self-fulfilling prophecy. What happens a few centuries later? Gold is discovered. And one of the biggest migrations in history happens.
Exactly. The California gold rush. It drew people from all over the world, all looking to strike it rich, just like the Spanish explorers, who set sail with those stories of a golden island, these gold rush pioneers. They were looking for wealth and opportunity.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And speaking of shaping perceptions, let's talk about another big influence on California's story. Strong women. We've already talked about Queen Calafia and her warriors, but this theme goes way beyond Montalvo's novel.
Oh yeah, definitely. Think about the women's suffrage movement, the fight for LGBTQ rights. It's like California is always pushing boundaries and challenging norms.
Yeah.
And it all kind of connects back to that image of a California that's ruled by women, a place where traditional power structures can be challenged.
It's true. I mean, the reality of California's history is complex. There's been discrimination and inequality, but there's also this drive, this striving for something better, pushing the limits of what's possible.
Yeah, absolutely. California's always been a place where people go to reinvent themselves, break free from their past, build new lives and identities.
Totally.
And that connects back to that idea of possibility. It's almost like the name California itself became a symbol of opportunity, a chance to start fresh.
It's a powerful idea. So how much of California's identity today do you think is shaped by these stories, by these myths?
It's a tough question. I don't think California is destined to be a certain way just because of its name, but those stories, those myths, they leave a mark. They become part of the place, and they influence how people see it, how they interact with it, how they imagine its future.
I think that's a really important point. It's not about saying California is just a bunch of stereotypes. It's about recognizing that all these layers of history, the cultural influences, they all contribute to making California what it is today.
Exactly. And one of those echoes that we haven't really looked at yet is the connection between Montalvo's California and that North African Barbary coast. We talked about it earlier. That cyclical nature. A real place inspires a fictional one, which then lends its name to a new place. That becomes dangerous in its own way.
Yeah, that definitely got my attention. It feels like there's something more to uncover there.
Oh yeah, for sure. It shows how connected our world is, even across huge distances and historical periods, cultures and stories. They can travel in crazy ways, leaving their mark on places far from their origins.
That's so cool. It makes you think about how interconnected everything really is. I mean, a 16th century Spanish romance novel can help us understand California today.
Exactly. And as we dig deeper into the story of California, we start to see these connections, these echoes, these threads that create this big tapestry. But those threads don't always tell a simple story, There are contradictions, there are complexities, there are dark moments, alongside brilliant ones.
Yeah, California's history is full of contradictions. But maybe that's part of what makes it so interesting. It's a place that always challenges us. That's hard to define. It's a place where dreams can come true or be shattered, where you can make a fortune or lose everything, where beauty and danger are right next to each other.
And that brings us back to Montalvo's California, that vision of an island paradise with a powerful queen, full of gold, and guarded by mythical beasts. It's a fantasy, of course, but it's a fantasy that still speaks to us, that draws us to California, even if we don't know exactly why.
It's like California itself is a character in this story,
Right.
A character that's always changing, reinventing itself, and surprising us.
Exactly. And as we keep exploring this character, we should ask ourselves, what do we see when we look at California? What parts of this story resonate with us? Do we see Queen Calafia's spirit in California today? Are we drawn to the stories of gold and opportunity? Or are we more interested in the complexities and contradictions that seem to be a part of this place?
I think those are great questions for our listeners to think about. Because California is more than just a place on a map. It's an idea, it's a myth, it's a dream that's always unfolding, always evolving, always surprising us.
And as we wrap up this look at the name California, we encourage you, our listener, to keep digging, keep asking questions, keep searching for those connections that make this place so fascinating.
It's funny, we've talked about gold and griffins and queens, but we haven't even mentioned what might be California's most captivating feature. Its natural landscape.
Ah, yes, California's environment. It's as diverse and full of contradictions as its history and its culture.
Yeah.
You can find towering redwood forests, and then scorching deserts, rugged coastlines, and snow-capped mountains, all pretty close to each other.
It's like Mother Nature just took everything And threw it all together in one place.
And that diversity, it's a big part of what makes California, California. Think about it. The environmental movement, sustainability, outdoor recreation, it's all ingrained in the culture.
I've always felt like Californians understand that how they're doing is connected to how the environment is doing. Like they know they're part of something bigger.
And that awareness has led to some amazing things like renewable energy and protecting huge areas of wilderness.
You know, it's like that tension between fantasy and reality. It's not just in the name or the history. It's in how California relates to nature too.
For sure. There's that picture of California as this perfect paradise, endless sunshine and nature. And there's truth to that, but there's also the droughts and the wildfires and the challenge of balancing what people need with taking care of the environment.
It reminds us that California, like anywhere else, is always changing. We can try to make it better, but we have to respect nature too.
I think it's fitting that our deep dive into California ends with this thought. The name itself is full of possibility and beauty, but it also shows us how complex and contradictory this place is.
So as we wrap up today, what's the one thing you think our listeners should remember?
I think it's this. Names are more than just names. They have stories and history and layers of meaning that can surprise you. California. It shows us the power of imagination and how much myths and legends matter and how connected everything in the world is.
It's been an amazing journey.
It really has.
Learning about all these sides of California, from the myths to today. What stands out most to you?
I think it's that California is always changing. The past and the present are always talking to each other. Fantasy and reality blur together. And that hope for something better, it's always there.
I agree completely. So to all of you listening, keep exploring, keep asking questions, keep looking for those hidden meanings that make California so fascinating. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. And until next time, keep on learning.